long list of names.
Sprinkles the rat.
It was almost longer, yes. It was almost longer than any other part. There were snakes, there were rats, there were... So...
I think we're all ready.
All right.
So welcome to our Selective Mutism Workshop series. I'm Dr. Rachel Bussman. I'm the head of the SM service here and clinical psychologist, and we have had a really great series this year, starting with our SM 101 workshop and moving on to building brave muscles and climbing the ladder. We added a new workshop this year that I believe was done with Laura and Michelle, who is in the audience, on coexisting disorders with SM, and our most recent workshop covered collaborative relationships with schools with Janine. All of these workshops can be found on our website, and so that you can watch them and also download the PowerPoints. We are obviously taping this event now. It's not going to be live streamed, but as soon as we get the technical difficulties fixed, this will be up and running. We strongly encourage everyone to use the archive workshops and watch them in order, starting with SM 101, so that you can learn all the different skills and sort of build on your knowledge base. I know I speak for the whole team when I say that tonight's workshop is our absolute favorite. Hear our voices. Every year we ask a few brave kids, and this year we asked several brave parents and also a brave moderator to talk about their experiences and really share a little bit about what they've learned and what they have conquered. This year we asked parents to be a part of this panel, and I think it's going to be really exciting to have them there. Our moderator is Sarah, and I'm going to let her introduce herself, but we'll quickly share that we were very, very fortunate to have her 2 summers ago as a summer intern. Her openness about her own challenges as a child with SM really helped in furthering our own awareness, and we were so thankful and appreciative to have her as a volunteer. Now we just need to get you to move to New York City. So without taking up more time, I will turn things over to Laura to introduce herself, and then over to Sarah.
I'm Laura Kermeyer. I'm the director of the Brave Buddies program, and excited to be here tonight. It's one of my favorite nights, a chance for us all to practice having our voices heard, and we've got an incredible panel. I'm really looking forward to each of them having a chance to have you hear their voices. Thanks for joining us. And Sarah, well, introduce yourself.
I'm Sarah, so I'm just going to give you a couple of little facts about myself, like the kids will. My name is Sarah. My age, I'm 23. I have 3 siblings. I have 3 cats as well. My favorite activities are reading and watching movies. And I'm not in a grade, but I did graduate college last year, so now I'm thinking about grad school. And I had SM when I was 3 to 14, and now I'm over it. And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce some of our brave talkers that we have.
Hi,
So,
my name is Lulu. I am 8 years old. I have an older sister. I have a buddy named Chocolate. I like running. I'm in 3rd grade and I go to Stafford Road School.
Excellent, telling us all of those things.
And remembering all
And
of that.
remembering all those things.
Great remembering it. Nice loud voice.
and then
All right, go for it.
My name is Samantha. I'm 7 years old. I have a sister that is named Lexi, and my pets are Sammy and Mama,
Wait, what kind of pets are they?
and they are cats.
Cats. We've got a bunny, we've got cats.
And
Favorite activity? I'm trying to remember what you told me before.
horseback riding.
Horseback riding. And what grade are you in school?
Horseback riding.
Horseback riding. It's so much fun. I love horseback riding. And what
Yeah.
grade in school are you?
1st grade.
First grade. So beautiful job. What a nice loud voice. I believe everyone, even in the back row, could hear that incredible brave voice. Beautiful job using your voice, Samantha. And over here we've got...
Hi, my name is Elise. I'm 7 years old. I have 2 sisters and 1 brother. I have a dog named Lila and a fish named Ginger. I like to play the piano. I'm in the 1st grade.
Beautiful reading that off. And Elise, I think they could hear you all the way in the back row too. Beautiful. beautiful loud voice.
With a
And
lot
we've
of
got
pets.
more pets.
More pets.
I'm trying to keep track and I can't.
My name is Mia. I'm 9 years old. I have one sister named Jenna. I have a dog named Annie, and I like to do gymnastics. I'm in 4th grade, and I go to North Main.
Beautiful job
Amazing.
remembering all that. Beautiful voice. Whoa, this is an incredible panel already. I can see it. Thank you, Mia, for introducing yourself. And we've got someone special sitting next to you.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm Samantha's mom. I'm not going to tell you my age.
Or what grade you're in.
But I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Hi, I'm Adrian. I have a daughter who is currently working with Dr. Bussman. She's 4 years old.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Beautiful job with all the introductions. So I know what we have now are some questions that we've practiced being able to answer that tend to be pretty common questions. But then what we want to do is also be able to open this up and make this as interactive as possible to hear the incredible voices of the audience too, just like your incredible voice, and have a chance to be able to ask both the parent and our brave panelists questions. But first we have a couple we've practiced, and I think Sarah's all set with those.
So the first question is for Lulu, and that is, what were some brave things you have done?
I have told the story in front of my whole class.
Wow. That is really
Super
brave.
brave.
Telling a story in front of a whole class is super, super brave. I know some grown-ups, maybe even in the room, who would have a tough time with that. That's a great example.
And then I have a question for Samantha, which is also, what are some brave things you have done?
Brave things you've done. I have a long list of brave things I know you've done.
Me too.
So one example would be using your voice or something else.
Using my voice at morning meeting.
Using your voice at morning meeting is even better than just using your voice. Morning meeting tends to be the hardest part of the day for a lot of our kids. They come into school and they start the day off sitting in a circle and being asked lots of questions in front of a whole group. And Samantha has become incredibly brave using her voice in morning meeting. Good example.
Great example.
Do you have another one or no more? Another one, I thought so. What's another one? So I'm trying to think if it was something about being able to use your voice in restaurants, or was it somewhere else? Restaurants. Another example. So are you using your voice in your restaurant to your mom, or are you using it to people you've never met before?
People that I never met before.
People you've never met, yeah, not an easy thing.
Another thing that's really hard for our kids.
A lot of, really, can be really hard. And it's a great example of a way to practice bravery. And so going into restaurants and or other places in our community and practicing being able to talk to these strangers, people that we don't know and don't have a long history of not talking to, is a great way to build up the brave muscles. Two great examples, Samantha.
Well, now I have a question for Mia, and which is, what was your favorite part of learning how to be brave?
Meeting my therapist, Jimmy.
Meeting therapist.
I told you.
Janine's holding up a prompt card.
Okay.
Your favorite part, actually it was not unprompted, that was unprompted. All together, Mia came in with that on her own. So meeting her therapist, Janine, was her favorite part of learning how to be brave. And so I think what that speaks to, which is so important to me, so I'm glad that you brought it up, is even though it's a lot of hard work to practice bravery, it can be a lot of hard work to sit up in front of a whole crowd and be brave, that we can find lots of creative ways to have fun at the same time. And so a really great therapist like Janine finds a way to integrate fun into practicing being brave, so that someone like Mia, who's trying so hard to use her brave voice, can actually have fun and have her favorite thing actually be her therapist. So that was great that you brought it up, Mia.
Well, now I have a question for Elise, which is, Elise, I'm so sorry. If you did Brave Buddies, what was it like and what was your favorite part?
My favorite part was going to the water park and the zoo.
Favorite part was going to the water park and the zoo. Now, I've actually heard that a couple times.
I hear that quite a bit.
The zoo tends to be the hit. Now, wait a minute, was one of your favorite parts the zoo too, or no?
Yeah.
Yes. So, at the zoo, the kids get a chance to use their brave voice all over the place to tons and tons of different people. And what we've found that is super, super cool when we go to the zoo is that it's actually really hard not to use your brave voice. It gets us so excited to see the animals and see the animals doing cool things that it's a great place to practice being able to get spontaneous. It's almost too difficult to resist the urge to want to call out, oh, look at the penguin that's sliding down the hill, or look at the polar bears. And that's what we found, is that when we bring our kids during our Brave Buddies week long on the last day to the zoo, they've been practicing for 4 days leading up, and they get to the zoo, and there's just tons of spontaneity. And part of that is the environment. So thinking about an activity that can pull for spontaneous verbalizations. And then also part of that is the practice leading up. So all of the rehearsal leading up to that zoo day. A great example, Elise, thanks.
I think we all have a lot of fun at the zoo too.
We all have a
Not
hard
just-
time staying quiet at the zoo.
For sure.
Alright, so I have another question for Samantha, which is, what was your favorite part of learning to be brave?
Favorite part of learning to be brave. So do you remember what your favorite part is, or do you want some help?
I want to help.
You want some help. Good job letting us know, and it's really important to always let us know when you need some help.
Luckily, we have someone who probably knows a lot of things that Samantha liked.
We talked about being able to do your concert and singing in front of all your friends and parents and teachers.
So being able to do a concert, I just have to get this straight. So Samantha was able to do a concert where she actually sang in front of a whole bunch of people, something I could never do today or any day. Not just because I have an awful voice, but so you were able to get in front of a big crowd and sing.
Wow.
That's an incredible example of bravery.
I think we have other examples at this table of
We
kids
have some other
who've done
examples.
maybe some acting or performing.
We do. I actually know that Elise actually has been doing some great bravery acting and has gotten really into theater and even has a performance coming up that she's been practicing for. And do you know of other examples
Well,
or
I'm
no?
thinking that Mia, you were saying you did gymnastics, and I wonder if you do that in front of people or just all by yourself?
In front of people.
In front of people. Another great example of bravery, definitely. It'd be kind of funny to just do gymnastics in front of a mirror by yourself.
Although it might be fun.
It could be.
I have another one with Samantha. This year for her birthday, she could really, really enjoy everybody singing happy birthday to her.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a really good
Fun
example
for
too.
her.
Birthday parties can be really, really tough for our kids, both having them and going to them. And so even though we might think that having a birthday party is an incredible fun celebration where we can relax and enjoy, all of that attention can actually make some of our kids really struggle. And so some of the most challenging moments we find at birthday parties is sitting down and having everyone sing happy birthday, or having that cake, which we think is such a beautiful ritual or routine, come out can actually be really difficult for our kids. And so we actually have found all sorts of fun ways to practice for both going to birthday parties and having a birthday party. And what I'm hearing is Mom gave a good example of this year, your birthday party was one where you really got to enjoy. Use your loud, brave voice and be able to blow out a candle or no.
Blow out all the candles and be smiling and happy the whole time.
I love it. Great example.
I had another question for Mia, which is, what situations were the hardest to brave talk in?
I can think of so many for me. I can think of a long list. So can you think of one, or do you need some help thinking of one?
Help.
Some help. Great job letting us know you need some help. So the question is, some examples of times when it was hard to use your brave voice. So was it hard at first to use your brave voice at school or not really?
Yeah.
Yes. So that would be a great example. So at one point, it was really hard to use your brave voice at school. Now how about now? Is it still hard, kind of hard, or not hard at all? Not hard at all. Whoa, we skipped the whole middle part. So it was really hard and now it's not hard at all. That's pretty cool.
I don't think me is alone. I bet other kids too. Lulu, was it hard to talk in school or easy to talk in school before? Hard. And is it hard now? Middle or easy?
Easy.
Easy. She skipped the middle part
Skipped the middle
too.
part too, you guys both did. And how about for you, Samantha? Was it hard at first to talk at school or not so hard?
Not so hard.
Not so hard. And how about now? Is it still not so hard or easy peasy?
Not so hard.
Not so hard, there we go. And Elise, how about for you? Was it hard at first to talk at school or not so hard? Hard. And how about now? Still hard, kind of hard, or easy? Easy.
Wow.
We got lots of good
jumpers.
examples. Good examples of how things can change. So you can take an environment in which it's really, really hard and actually succeed at getting to a point where it feels really easy. And I bet there's other examples outside of school. I know school is one that we focus on a lot and we talk a lot about in all of our different workshops because it tends to be the most common. And it tends to be the most common because if you think about it, it's the place where our kids end up spending so much time. And maybe a lot of that time was rehearsing being nonverbal or having a hard time verbalizing. And so it is a place where we place a lot of emphasis and really demand a collaborative relationship in order for the progress to be made. But I'm trying to think of other places where it might be hard. I know some of the,
Lulu, was it hard to talk on play dates or not so hard before? It was hard on play dates,
so it's a great example. Play dates can sometimes be hard,
even though they're fun.
even though they're super fun, and even though we might want to have the play dates, it might be a place that's hard. And I'm curious in other activities too. So Samantha, is it hard to use your brave voice when you're in horseback riding lessons, or not really? Hard. And has it gotten easier, or is it still hard? It got easier, so there's a good example. So extra activities like gymnastics or theater and acting, even though we might really want to do it, it might be hard. Do we have more questions, or?
Do you want me to ask her something else?
I was actually wondering what Samantha's favorite part of Brave Buddies was.
Your favorite part of Brave Buddies, so go ahead, come on and sit up in that. I'm trying to remember.
Maybe if you push them in.
There we go, perfect, we'll scoot it back. And your favorite part of Brave Buddies? Thinking. Were you at Brave Buddies when we had a snowball fight, or you weren't? Yes.
Yes.
That was my favorite part. What was your favorite part when you were doing Brave Buddies? So we talked about the zoo was fun. Would you say that was your favorite part, or was there something else, like the ice cream or?
Prize door.
Prize door, ice cream.
Ice cream.
The ice cream. So when we went to the ice cream shop, did we practice using our brave voices, or did we just get ice cream?
Our voices.
We practiced our voices, we did. We actually
We practiced
practiced
a
our
whole
lot leading up to the ice cream shop. So being able to go into the ice cream shop and order ice cream took a lot of practice. I think that's a lot of our favorite is the ice cream shop. Good example, Samantha.
And now I was wondering, I have a question for Mia, which was, is there anything you wish you could have said when you couldn't talk, or when it was harder for you to talk?
I wish I could have stood up to bullies.
Instead
Instead
of
of
bullies.
to bullies, that's a big one. And I know that probably hits home for a lot of parents hearing that. But that's probably one of the things parents often will communicate with us that is so challenging, knowing that your child is in a school setting and not able to use their voice to speak up to bullies. And I'm glad you have your voice now to speak up to bullies. So there's what I call a double whammy in that one, right? It's not just the ability to be brave with your voice, it's the ability to assert yourself. It is hard for so many of us to assert ourselves, whether we need to work on a brave voice or not, but then to also have the challenge of being able to use your voice. So I'm glad you reached that goal, Mia. That's a good example.
That's a good one.
To the parents.
Yeah, let's move to the parents a little bit.
So we
Give
have
them a
some-
chance to join.
So for Robin, I was wondering, how did or does the therapist involve you in treatment?
Right from the very start, when we came in the door, you know, we were brought in to kind of learn all the techniques and get education about what SM was, and really started the skills training right off the bat with Laura is our therapist. So. And that was so relieving to me. It was a little anxiety producing because learning those skills is really hard
It's a lot.
initially, but I just felt like I was in the right place finally, and I really was gonna have the right help for the first time in a long time that I felt that way.
And what about for you? What was, oh, sorry, what's your question?
Do you want to ask the same question?
Oh, yes, the same question. So, same with you. How were you involved with the therapy and treatment?
I was very involved. She was 3 when we started, so we worked with Dr. Bussman, and like you said, it was a little intimidating with the earpiece and learning how to phrase the different questions, but it really did morph, and it was very encouraging, and I felt a lot of support. And transitioning it into the home, getting training, meeting with Dr. Bussman separately, and doing the sessions together was a very helpful way to begin and continue.
And then this next question is again for both of you, which was, how does your therapist work with the school?
Amazingly. We learned to scaffold all her goals. Laura came to the school and did a training for the entire staff who works with Samantha, and has supported me every conversation, every other week in continuing to, continue to build on her goals and change them as needed, and any issues that come up, she's really been there to help us figure out what to do at school, and to directly speak to the teacher at times if we needed to do that when there was some kind of slowdown in the progress. So, yeah.
Same here, Dr. Bussman trained or had a training session with my daughter's teachers, came to the school to see the setting. I also have a see it for my daughter who came for some training here with me during the sessions, and then I would step out of the room and the see it would be in the room with my daughter, and that was a really nice segue for her to start to verbalize in the classroom because she was comfortable speaking with the see it. The see it used the techniques, also talked to the teachers about it. So that was really a wonderful way to transition into verbalizing in the classroom.
Also, I just want to add, in developing the 504 plan, there was no way I could have done it without the help of Laura.
I think what the parents are pointing out, and it's just 2 examples of the different levels of intervention that we can have, but how important it is to have collaboration, and it can't just be a one-time conversation, but that it's a moving fluid relationship, and sometimes it needs less intervention, especially if there's a see it and sometimes it requires really constant, sort of like that bonsai tree in our presentation of kind of nurturing and really shaping things to go in the right direction.
And I know this is questions for the parents right now, but to give some other examples. So Lulu, I'm curious, I know you're busy drawing there, but do you remember, did your super cool therapist, who might be somewhere in the audience, ever come out and visit you at school or no? Yes. And so another great example of how a therapist has to find all different ways to be collaborative with the school setting, and it might mean actually being in that school setting and working hands-on with teachers. Was it okay with you that she was there, or did it feel really awkward? it was okay. So did you guys end up having fun when you were there?
Yeah.
Or was it all hard work?
Fun.
Yeah.
And I imagine she might have brought prizes or no prizes?
Prizes for all your hard work, a good example.
I have a question for Lulu too. Did we start in the school or did we start on the playground?
Oh, on the
That's a
playground.
really good
I'm glad
example.
you
Yeah, so
brought
Jacqueline's
that
pointing
up.
out something that's really important. So sometimes the work actually starts in the school, and sometimes it actually has to start outside of the school and gradually move into the school setting. And so I'm curious, actually, Mia, for you too. Did your therapist ever come to your school or no? Yes. So the super cool therapist you mentioned earlier actually came to visit you at school. And were there times when it was really fun to have her there or not so much?
Yeah.
Yes. All
I
right.
actually have a question about that too. Mia, did she ever come when it was just the two of you, or was it always really busy with other kids there?
She came when it was just the two of us.
When it was just the two of you. So that's another piece, right, Laura, is that sometimes we need to start in the school or outside the school. And sometimes we need to start with as few people as possible, just the child and the therapist, and then add people or change the classroom or go to the playground. So it's really important to change those variables of people, places, and activities pretty systematically.
And one example of changing it too might be that maybe for all different reasons, it isn't possible to have a therapist who you're working with come into the school setting. And so there's other options as well. So Elise, did mom ever come and work with you in school to use your voice, or she never came to visit you at school? She came to visit. And so sometimes our parents might be actually using the skills and learning ways in the school setting to help the kids using their voices.
I think mom did some fun games too.
Yeah.
Did mom do fun games or was she doing schoolwork? Games.
Yeah. So all of our buddies now are drawing a little bit as we continue to ask the adults some questions.
So the next question, again for both of you, was what were your biggest challenges?
A couple. I think one is to wait to get to elicit a response. You want to just rush, and if you don't get a response right away, either answer a question or ask another question. And so that's something I'm still working on. So that's a big challenge.
I think for me, it's people who don't understand what SN is, family, friends, just always feeling like it initially before treatment, having to always try to make, try to help them understand, but not even before I didn't understand either. So we were always just kind of feeling a lot of pressure to have her speak, but it wasn't happening. So once we got here and we started treatment, it was much easier to deal with those outside people and helping, on them understand what the situation is.
And that actually leads right into the next question, which is what do you know now that you wish you would have known maybe before you started receiving treatment?
Good question.
That's a good question. Just that the level of support is really there, and that, there are ways to educate yourself, educate others, and help your child in a way that is really, it's fun. I mean, she enjoys coming here, she enjoys the sessions, looks forward to it, and that's a really helpful piece, that she really enjoys it. And very proud of herself too.
And for me, I would think we wasted a lot of time in treatment that wasn't working. So I wish I'd realized that at the time. It cost us a lot of money and frustration. So really being able to find the right treatment was critical for us.
And the last question was, what is the best advice that you've been given so far?
These are tough questions.
There's a lot.
I think the idea of the scaffolding, really, to understand that there's an actual, a structure that we can kind of depend on as she grows, as she changes, to help her move up, and really understanding that that support is there and how to use it and work with it has been great advice to me, because I know we'll get there. Like, I'm not in a race to have her do certain things, and just knowing here's where we are and here's where we're gonna get.
That's a
So
great point.
it's a super point, and so what I want to do is just explain what scaffolding
I'm
means.
sorry.
Because I think for us now it's become
It's
so
like, yeah,
fluid
second language.
and automatic, but it might not for everybody who ends up watching or listening. You know, what does scaffolding mean? And so what Robin's referencing are the behavioral skills that we've learned that we know to be effective in helping a child develop distress tolerance. And that's really what we're talking about, right? Is their ability to tolerate the anxiety that they feel, the discomfort that they feel, and being able to verbalize and succeed at that. So the behavioral skills act as scaffolding. They help surround and support the child while they're developing their distress tolerance. And then the amazing thing we see that Robin was referencing is over time we can decrease some of that scaffolding. We can reduce some of that scaffolding, and they're able to keep that momentum. They've learned these new behaviors. It becomes their new default, and they're able to now progress forward and approach instead of avoid. And in some situations, as Robin also referenced, we figure out where we continue to need some scaffolding and where we're able to graduate off of it. And that's part of treatment and part of having a really involved and interactive therapist or clinician working with you and your family, is knowing when and where to build the scaffolding and when to help titrate it down.
And I would just add, Robin said something else really important, it's not a race. And so Laura and I talk about this a lot, all the time, that there's some short-term goals, and then there really is kind of a long game of treatment, and that we can't race or, make it hurry up, even though we want to, but that we really need to be very planful and systematic in our goals, and also see some of the longer-term goals. Great. Are we ready to open it up to our panel?
I think so.
Or open, I should say open it up to you.
Or did you get a chance? I cut you
Oh,
off.
you did?
Oh, no,
It's the best advice.
I mean, a lot of what you said, but I also think just in terms of the techniques and how you can make it natural, so that it becomes the new normal, and just have fun with it, I think is very important to, if possible, not be so worried or anxious, and just make it a game, have fun, and you will get there. It takes time, but like you said, it's not a race, and you will get there.
And I
That's
think
so
you
important.
speak to sort of, the behavioral skills, I think, when we're learning them and learning to teach them, and as parents are learning them, it's a little awkward. Right? I kind of equate it to learning how to drive, and in the beginning, when do I look at the mirror and the gas and the brake, and it feels very awkward, right? But then you sort of find your own style and find your own voice, and then it becomes very playful again, and that's the fun, and then it becomes fun in a new kind of way.
Definitely, and I think that is taking your time with it, spending time on it, and developing that comfort level so it becomes so genuine. And then that's when your own personality and your own style of interacting with the child kicks in. But at first, just knowing that it's going to be awkward, like a new language. When we first learn a new language, we feel really uncomfortable using it and self-conscious of using it. And then the more we practice it and the more we use it, the more fluid it becomes. And that's really what this is. The skills become a new language, a new way of interacting with our children.
It becomes hard to stop doing.
It gets really hard. My husband will
Mine
attest to
mine
that.
too.
Yes, although Samantha will say, you're talking like Brave Buddy.
That's not uncommon.
That's not
We'll often hear kids will say, usually in the first 1 to 3 sessions, why are you talking that CMI talk? Or why are you talking like the Brave Buddies or the Big Buddies? And that's good. That's a good indicator. That means you're using the skills and that you're practicing, and know that they'll get used to it after a while. But it's them also acclimating to the skills. That's the reason for using it daily. They start to hear it, feels weird to them, and then it starts to become automatic.
And then they start to remind us to give them X or stars or brave bucks, which is awesome also, because it means it's really well paired with being brave and speaking and verbalizing. So I love it when kids remind me to give them a check or put a star down on their paper. Now we can turn it over. We have a nice audience, and I'm sure we have a lot of we can open it up to ask questions to anybody.
And just a little bit of praise really quick.
Yeah,
So the incredible panel, sitting for a super long.
super long time, very brave.
And we have
job.
some incredible drawings up
I-
here.
It is really great.
So questions from the audience?
Great.
I have a simple question actually. Sure, as a parent, like sometimes it's hard to gauge how is the other side in terms of like how does it feel as a child when somebody says like, hey, do you want a dog? Do you want to talk to the person? Or how does it feel? Like that's one case, and you don't want to talk as a child. Second is you actually ended up talking, and then you got a kudos, and then you come, hey, good job doing the brave talking. And how does that feel? And how does it feel to be like anxious? Like, oh, I don't really want to talk, but then, all right, let's go. I mean, is it like something in your stomach, or is it like, okay, all right, can you turn around?
These are so many
These are
questions.
so
I'm gonna slow you down because I want us to
Yeah.
be able to try and give an opportunity to answer all of them because they're all really good.
Yeah,
And-
generally, like, how does it feel on the side? And it's
Now you're
hard
gonna
for me
have
to
me start
emphasize
writing them
that.
down. All right, so I'm gonna start with the last one first.
And I wonder if maybe Sarah might want to be able to answer.
That was exactly what we.
Laura and I
So the
tend to think
feeling
alike.
inside, because the reason, I think Rachel and I both probably simultaneously were like, Sarah, is some of the questions you're asking are the ones we die to ask our kids, and we've got to think about developmentally appropriate ways to ask kids at different ages and different stages. And so a lot of what you're asking for, except for the last question, was more about the cognitive part, more about the thoughts, more about like what's going on, what do you think or what do you feel when it's hard or someone tells you to talk and you can't. And there's a really important developmental lens we have to keep on when we're treating anxiety, is 8 and below, it would be incredibly difficult, rare, unique for a child to be able to give you the thoughts or the cognitions. We think as parents and adults and teachers that they are able to, and we tend to want to pull for it. And there are some rare cases where there are kids who can. But for the most part, metacognition, a really important part of development, hasn't happened yet. Metacognition is the ability to be aware of your thoughts, and that your thoughts are different from other people's thoughts. So more likely, when we're 8 and below, what we can tap into is the last question you had. What might be the feeling? Like, do you get an uncomfortable feeling in your stomach? Or does your throat kind of get stuck? Or we had one great panelist up here one year who said, my lips felt like they were glued shut. Crazy glue on them, right? A good example of, I think, what you're asking for, trying to understand, to relate or connect to what the feeling might be. But for the cognitions, some of the other questions you had, we're gonna turn to Sarah, and then maybe we can see if Lulu, Samantha, Elise, and Mia might be able to speak to some of the feelings.
So as far as how it feels when someone was asking me a question, or trying to get me to speak, it is very anxiety provoking, and I would much rather them have just been quiet and just let me speak on my own terms. But of course, if I had received treatment here at CMI, I would have been kind of forced out of that box sooner and maybe gotten over it a little bit sooner. And then
So I'm gonna totally,
Yeah,
it's so rude of
totally
me.
interrupt.
It's so rude. But I wanna make a point of what you're talking about, is the difference between initiating a verbalization and responding to a verbalization. So one of your questions is, when someone asks, how does it feel? And Sarah is speaking to that. For her, and it's not the same for everyone, for her, it felt more uncomfortable to someone ask me, and then the expectation is a verbalization back, and then that was that overwhelming feeling. Very different, she says, for her, it would have been easier if she could have initiated. If she could have decided and chose when and how and where she was gonna speak or not speak. Now that can vary from individual to individual, whether it's easier to respond first or be spontaneous. But it's something you definitely want to be hearing your clinicians and or teachers or others talking about, spontaneous versus responsive speech.
And then what was the last question?
I know.
What did it feel like, or?
Yeah, what did it feel like?
Yeah, when versus like when you got stuck, you know, like lips got stuck, it's like something in the tummy, and And once you got the pat on the back, oh, good job, take a break. Was it next time, did that go away, or did that help? And did the feelings go away? Like you didn't see the lips pursing or lips getting stuck or something like that?
So I think that's helping though, but I think it's two separate questions. One is when you got stuck, what was the feeling? And then I think the other question is, when you got praise because you were able to verbalize, did that help or not help, or is it a different question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I got stuck, the feeling was I often got like the tightness in the throat. I didn't have like felt like I couldn't open my mouth. It was more like I couldn't get it out. It was like I knew that I knew how to talk, and that I talked in other settings, but I felt like I could not possibly get it out in that setting when someone was asking.
It's a really, again,
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
just such a really great point, and I think we hear a lot about this as adults are reflecting back on their own experiences, and there's actually literature out there about laryngeal tension and how to sort of address that with vocal cords and what happens before sounds are being made, and that's done with Evelyn Klein and her team at LaSalle, so it's not an uncommon experience.
I think most commonly what we tend to hear, as far as a physical feeling, is that that's more of what our kids 8 and below can report, is just it's uncomfortable. It just feels uncomfortable. And so then we tag it as adults as anxiety or distress or worry. But it might be very hard, actually, even for some of our panelists who are already up here being super, super brave, to actually connect anxiety with that feeling. It was more of just a feeling that might have stopped them from being able to use their voice. Got that shoe.
Got the shoe. And I don't know, maybe
It's a long time to
Adrian
sit up
or
here.
Robin wanna comment on anything,
Yeah.
any of your observations?
Well, my daughter, before starting to verbalize, would tell me before we go into a situation, I lost my voice.
I lost my voice.
And for Samantha, it physically, her whole body changed. Like, tongue would come out, like, it was so inside of her that I don't know what she was feeling. I know she was just wanting it to go away, because her tongue would come out, her eyes would go down to, she could not give you any contact if someone even spoke to her. And her, even preschool, they were like, well, she's autistic, and I knew at home that that wasn't happening. She couldn't, so that response was very visceral inside of her.
That frozen deer in the headlight kind of an expression or stance is what Robin's talking about, and is it not it's not an uncommon one.
And I also would add that it's not uncommon, while we understand SM to be an anxiety disorder, for kids to say that they're not anxious or worried. And that really goes back to what Laura was talking about as far as metacognition and being able to think about your own thoughts or think about your own experience. Is that sometimes kids don't report feeling anxious, or maybe not even connected to that feeling. And so sometimes we talk about things that are hard or things that are more challenging or easier, but that we don't necessarily need to hear that it's worrisome or scary or.
So you just reminded me of something that's important actually for us to understand, is that some kids, even when they get older, so even when metacognition has happened, might still struggle with the ability to connect that what made it so difficult to verbalize was anxiety. So I have a handful of kids who are older now, have graduated out of treatment, and are no longer having selective mutism impair their daily functioning. And when I reached out to them and asked them to join us on the panel, they're like, what are you talking about? This was never a problem for me. And so I don't say that's always the case, but it's not rare for a child, again, when they struggled 8 and below and no longer have it as impairing, to maybe not be able to reflect back on, oh yeah, that's anxiety. That's what that thing is.
I was gonna say, Samantha has no idea what anxiety is or being uncomfortable. She just because she's been verbal now for so long too. There's no memory of whatever that feeling was.
Great questions.
This is just for anybody, like, do you want to talk, or do you just want to avoid it? Is it something like you want to but you can't, and that's why you're like, or you're like, okay, it's so anxiety provoking that I'm gonna run away from it? Is it something that motivates you?
These are really good questions.
Yeah, great questions.
Well, I think we can
And
ask
so I'm
the kids.
curious, Lulu, for you, did you want to be able to talk to your friends, or you didn't want to?
I did.
You
You
did.
did, yeah.
And so, being able to now talk to your friends, is it the same as it was before when you couldn't talk to them, or is it more fun because you can talk to them?
It was more fun.
It was more fun. Now, my questions and the way I asked them in a courtroom would be thrown out, totally leading, totally leading questions. And I think some of what you're asking is still a little tough to be able to have that reflective capacity. But it does speak to that some of the kids will say, absolutely, I wanted to be able to be screaming on the playground too. And yes, it's very motivating to want to be able to engage with my friends in that way that I couldn't before. And for some of them, they might say, actually, I don't know if I necessarily wanted to or not. Sarah, how about for you?
So it was a little bit of both. Some of it was that I was dying to talk to my friends or to whoever, to the teachers. But some of it was also, that's too hard, I just kind of want to avoid it. So that's why,
So it was both.
yeah, it was both.
And how about Mia, for you? Did you want to be able to use your voice, or not really?
Yeah.
Yes. And now that you can use your voice with your friends, is it more fun at school or not so much?
More fun.
More fun. All right.
And how about you, Elise?
Did you want to be able to use your voice with your friends at school or not really?
Yes.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I wonder too, in the beginning of treatment, right, it might be that a kiddo's saying, I don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and that's part of the avoidance, because in the beginning, it just might be too hard.
And so that's a rule that
That
we
is.
definitely want to make at the beginning of treatment, which is never ask. So if you,
Right.
if you ask, do you want to order your own ice cream or do you want me to order it? You're for sure, 9 out of 10 times, gonna get, you order it for me, or do you want to talk? No, because that's certainly what we've heard it probably feels like. No, everything in my body is saying no, right? And so absolutely try not to ask. It should be, if we're at a point where we want to practice being able to use our voice, that we're using something we call a direct command. Go ahead and order your ice cream. Go ahead and tell the teacher what you have for lunch.
Or saying, are you gonna order chocolate or vanilla or something else? But not giving the default of, do you wanna order or you don't wanna order? Because that might be very tempting to make that choice.
Yeah, good point. Yes?
I'm wondering about the school setting. What general supports, I heard 504, but what are general supports that are useful or beneficial in the school setting?
It's a great question.
You guys want to respond?
I can attempt it. I mean, I think for each child it's different, but we did Brave Buddies, and then right from Brave Buddies, I contacted the school before, but we did a thing called Fading In, which was an R504, which means Samantha got exposure to the classroom before everyone else, and I was in there with her, and I took the skills learned, the CDI, VDI, and warming up and all that, and we just went into the school, and that helped her in the classroom immediately. She went into kindergarten verbal, which she had never been before. So I thought that was like the biggest thing, and then needing more time to answer questions was very important, because she always is delayed response. That waiting 5 seconds is critical. She actually has a language disorder, so we needed even more time. We weren't aware of it at the time. But also that I trained the teachers, the kindergarten teacher that first year, that was in there, that she would accommodate me in teaching. We have a Brave Bucks chart that, amen, has been amazing for us. That it's a daily communication that's in her 504. So I could see where her goals were, and we targeted them specifically, and if she was making, hitting those goals daily at school. So she brings home, they've changed over the course of the 2 years from green to orange to whatever, but, so I would say that, the Brave Bucks chart, the daily communication, the fading in, critical, and we had meetings. I got a lot more time with the team, monthly meetings. Monthly, I got monthly meetings to help you know, continue to get good communication and implement any changes as we went.
I think we tend to ask, and I want Adrienne to answer, but I think we tend to ask as clinicians for more. Right, we tend to ask, so if we're going to do a teaching, if we're gonna do a consultation in the school, we might say that we want 2 hours, and if we get 90 minutes, that's great, or we know that we're not gonna get 90 minutes because it's hard to get everybody together, so we ask for 90, but we'll get 60. Or we ask for weekly meetings, and then we'll get every other week, or we'll get every month. Can you speak to sort of the younger, and I
Sure,
can certainly,
sure.
you can even explain what a SEAT is, because not everybody knows what a SEAT is.
Well, like I said, my daughter just turned 4 recently, so before the school year started, the teachers actually came to our house, which was a nice feature and made a big deal. They actually gave her a picture of them in advance, so she and I had an opportunity to look at the picture, talk about the teachers. When they came in, they were familiar-ish to her, and that was really helpful. She still looks at the picture a lot. So then we actually went to the classroom where the teachers were there, but no children were there ahead of school too. That was also really helpful. Training the teachers. And then see it is a special, what does it stand for? Special education itinerant teacher who 3 hours a week is basically shadows my daughter, and her goal was to encourage her to communicate. So to do that, first she came to our house, same thing, and my daughter felt very comfortable with her right away and started speaking to her, so that was a great first step. And then Sharon met us here, and we actually had training here. She was trained by Dr. Busman, and eventually I was faded out of the session, and it was just Sharon and my daughter talking. And then in the classroom, slowly, she started to elicit conversation with her, and then eventually now it's more generalized. And while she's still in the classroom, she is now speaking to her peers, to the teachers, raising her hand at circle time, and it's been really great.
And I think when you have a SEAT or any kind of supports, I think, would you say that Sharon has pulled back in some ways? Like she's still there, but that her role is to help? It
does. It develops over time, and I think at this point, even now, my daughter, while she loves her, kind of tells her to, you know, go to. She's happy she's there, but go to the side, and that's all good, you know. So,
which is actually pretty.
Which is pretty good. Yeah. No, it's great, and we're she's going to be in day camp at the school. And Sharon will be there also to help with the transition, because it'll be a new classroom, new kids, and some familiarity, but I think it will go a long way to making the transition hopefully fairly easy.
And I think that speaks to a really good point, which is around transitions. It may be totally appropriate that Sharon, that your daughter doesn't need her, she's kind of pushing her and like, come on, I want to get in the mix. But as we wind down with school, and even though she's staying in the same location, she's going to change rooms, we would really want there to be a bridge, and in that transition help kind of go from whether it's class to camp, or new teacher, or new, activity, to really just make sure that the transition is nice and seamless. Yes.
What would you say is a turning point in the slow spectrum, because it is a long time that it takes, and like we're doing the brave check marks, and some days are 5 and some days are 15, and how do you keep it going so that it keeps it still interesting?
Oh, that's a great
over the time.
That's a great question. Well, I'm wondering if I could ask any of the kids. Lulu, did you always earn the same prizes, or did you ever earn different prizes? You earn different prizes. And Elise, do you like the same things that you get for prizes? Or do you earn the same prizes or different prizes now? Different prizes. What about you, Mia? Different. And Samantha, do you like to earn prizes, or you don't?
I do.
You do. And do you get the same prize every time, or different ones?
Different ones.
Thanks for answering. So I think some of it is keeping the momentum going, means being diligent to a plan. Like you said, our plan is really important, and it's hard work to keep up the behavioral, kind of doing checks and having the communication go from teacher to home. And that's the way of really monitoring the goals and making sure to stay on top of them, and making sure to keep up with the kids and what's important to them and what they want to work towards and what's interesting and they're invested in, because that could change. And I think we can get used to, I remember working with a particular child who loved Spotted, and that was sort of our go-to. But eventually one day she said, like, I really want to play a different game. And I said, oh, right, it's not always about playing Spotted, we need to vary it. So we want to make sure to keep things fresh and interesting and offer lots of options. I think another thing we'll do when we've faded the use of prizes all the time, like really small prizes, and kids are a little bit older and working towards something bigger. I know Michelle does this a lot, where she takes a picture of a bigger prize and then cuts it up into puzzle pieces, and the kids are earning puzzle pieces to build onto a bigger thing, which I think is a much more creative way of just saying, you're gonna earn this at the end of 100 checks, because that's gonna be so far removed in the child's mind, but having it tangible and having the child really engage in that particular earning activity and keeping it fresh in their mind. Because if someone told me I was gonna get something like 2 weeks from now, I might really lose my steam to be motivated towards it.
And I think maybe, and I didn't hear it fully because I'm like multitasking, but I think maybe a part of your question, but help me if I misunderstood it, was also sort of like what tends to be the general trajectory of treatment, like how long.
Right, or once you're fully started,
Right,
like,
point, right.
Sarah, at 14, is it like, I don't need to get a check mark?
Yeah, so a really big part of what you're asking is the question that we see, there's lots and lots of literature, how long does it take to reshape a new behavior, right? And that's really what we're talking about, is we're talking about shaping a new behavior, a new response to distress, when you feel distress, a new way to manage it. And if you look in the literature, it's pretty frustrating because you'll see anything between 9 to 365 times that you have to rehearse something before it starts to become automatic. And that's actually consistent with what we see in the spectrum of presentations from any child to child, that it could be one child after rehearsing 5 or 6 times actually starts to get enough momentum that they don't need a sticker every time they use their brave voice. And we start to titrate off, and we graduate to a more intermittent form of reinforcement. And that there are other kids where it takes 20 or 30 or 40 times of rehearsal and practice before the behavior starts to become more automatic and starts to do what we call generalize, starts to occur across people, places, and settings, and then we're able to become more intermittent in the reinforcement. So those trajectories really vary, and they vary because complex variables for each individual child, but again, a really solid treatment approach, so a really solid behavioral therapist will be talking to you about that trajectory over the course of treatment. So helping guide you with monitoring, assessing on a regular basis progress, and when we're able to take down some of that scaffolding we talked about before, or build it up, or restructure it around a new behavior. And that's what treatment should be, is constantly assessing and reassessing those points of progress or turning points.
And I would also add that sometimes parents will say, like, when do we know that we're done, right? So let's say you've got sort of had a lot of improvement across areas, and then it's not knowing when am I done. And I think something we all talk about a lot is, if you had to assess things as they are today, would that be bringing you into treatment now? Because I think that we can use some more quantitative tools, and they're not perfect, so we have some rating scales that give us some great information, but they're not perfect. We can talk to teachers, we can talk to parents, but we also can say, okay, if things were as they were today, would you still be coming in for treatment? And I think that can sometimes help parents answer that question and say, yes, definitely, there are some real things that we want to work on, or you know what, actually, no, I think we've actually met our goals, and those last things are just really things I think we can work on our own, or they're just like really high, the highest of the ladder, so to speak, of bravery. And so I think that's helpful, but I think Laura's right that it needs to be a continual conversation. So we'll take a couple more questions, because I'm sensitive to the fact that it's hard for kids. It's hard for adults to sit a long time, but kids too. So maybe just see if anyone has any other questions.
So, I have a question. That's now, how long in general, like, what did you have to, like, tolerate your impatience a lot, like, in general, where, oh, how long is this really going to take? It has been 5 years or 2 years into this, and we got some improvements, but how do you know, like, that you're even doing, what's the rate, and, like, more about, and does it bring impatience and into the whole picture that, hey, and it has gotten to the stage where it has plateaued. Now what do? Like, it has been plateaued for 3 months. So, do you can say, for example, our son like doesn't talks in school, not talks in home, doesn't really talk to strangers, doesn't talk in specific places, talks when we are there, doesn't talk when we are not there, doesn't talk at school when we are there. It's kind of weird, like sometimes it's kind of confusing. Why? What? Really?
Yeah, all of those little discrepancies can really confuse us and keep
Yeah.
us on our toes as far as parents and again, teachers who are interacting with the child. And they can confuse us because we can see pockets of progress in some areas and not in others. And we kind of scratch our head and say, I don't get it. Why here and not there? And we don't always necessarily get the answer to that. But you've already shown me that you've got the skills to do what it is you're asking, which is to measure progress. So you started listing off all of the different variables that you would be wanting to monitor to show whether there is consistent progress or not, and to pick up on the times like you described where there's a plateau. And so plateau being like we're kind of holding ground, and maybe they're continuing to verbalize in some situations, but we're not continuing to see momentum or progress. So a good treatment should be giving you that feedback on a regular basis. It should be that you are as collaborative. You know, we talk about turning the parents and teachers into behavioral therapists. It's a team approach of behavioral therapists, and all of us should be assessing as we go along. Yeah. Did that answer your question, or there's more? You had a part in there about patience, and so I'll just comment on that for a minute. I've heard multiple times from parents that it often goes minimized how challenging and or frustrating at times it can be to manage the anxiety of their child. And so we can hear oftentimes in the media and other outlets all of the challenges of parenting other behaviors. And I think sometimes what you're touching on is how difficult it can be to manage that patience, that tolerance, modeling our own distress tolerance for our kids and hanging in there, trusting the process and trusting the skills. And so some things that we've seen that have been established have been these great systems for parents to connect with each other so that you can help each other with the patience and the distress tolerance. So whether it's through like a Facebook listserv or a support network through email, but being able to connect with other parents who can also speak to how it can be hard at times, and that support can be really helpful. I don't know if the two of you can reference that as
very active on the selective mutism, parents of children with selective mutism site. There's a lot of support on there to, you know, help with that kind of just day-to-day, my kid did this, oh gosh, it was one of these days, or wow, my kid did this today, and there's a lot of that support. And just in terms of from a parent's perspective, I can say that I know things that are going really well because I've stopped thinking about it. Like literally, when you'll know, because it's not going to be your priority anymore. It's something else now will be your priority that might change, but it's not going to be about their talking at school, or it's not going to be the SM, and you know, and that's how I feel like it'll always be there, and we're always going to keep working on it, but it's just not my big worry anymore, and it just naturally kind of happened because as she did well, my anxiety went down too.
How long it took? Like,
in terms of for Samantha and our journey, from starting kindergarten, she's now ending first grade. She's pretty much verbal everywhere, across all situations, but we still have all those things in place. But I realized, you know, at the beginning of the year, okay, our goal is 3 times a week sharing at morning meeting, and like now I'm like whatever, you know, because every day there's something there that I know she's sharing. We still practice, but I'm not worried about it because she's doing it on her own, and if we didn't practice, she'll come up with something on her own. So, you know.
Great. We'll take one more question. Thank you. Or 2 more.
I'm just wondering, like, as parents, like, what is something that the therapist told you that helped you understand what was going on with your child, and conversely, like, teacher, like a tip, for a teacher who's working with a child for the first time with SM and doesn't understand what it is?
I think open-ended questions like, hi, how are you? And greetings like, hi, bye, how are you today? Those are really hard. And so what I learned, I didn't know that, I appreciate that. So I think that's something that is helpful to share with teachers. Forced choice is a really big one, and I was quite, when I first heard it, it was awkward to get into that groove, but now I hear myself doing it, and she did really respond very well to that. I think it's and also waiting. Don't, to really wait and see. If you say, do you want the blue one or the red one, and then wait, because maybe it'll take an extra minute or so for them to respond, or count to 5, or do whatever. I think that's a big piece. And no, we're still working on things. Ordering a restaurant, ordering ice cream, things like that are still unfolding. Now she'll tell me, so that they'll hear it. But just in terms of the greetings, I would say, and the open-ended questions are big ones for school.
Bless you. I think that's actually like one of the first things I tell teachers is to stop saying hi and say it's nice to see you. It's because it's something you could really quick. Sometimes you don't have a lot of time, right? And if you only had to say a few things, I'd say in the beginning, avoid questions. Wait 5 seconds if you ask one, and figure out a different way to say hello and goodbye. Because, I mean, saying hi seems very innocuous, but if I'll use Stephanie as an example, if I say hi, it really is, there's a social demand to get a response. And so we really just, I try to just tell teachers and parents to just start with nice to see you, and then, I love your shoes today, or nice to see you, that's, a great backpack you have, and just really take the hi and bye and please and thank you off the table in the beginning.
I just want to do one thing is a distress tolerance. Like, these kids are anxious, and they have to learn to tolerate it. And I think, like, I notice all her teachers want to make her comfortable, make her comfortable, make her comfortable. That's not our goal. Our goal is for her to push through the discomfort. So not to be afraid at the right pace and with the right advice through the therapy, to not think that their anxiety is just going to go away. Really being able to sit with that, understanding they're going to have it, and you're not going to fix that. But
I think that's a really good point. I
for
actually
me as a parent.
have it in our PowerPoint that we teach. They actually have one of the treatment goals, diminish anxiety with a line through it, because that's just so important that's not the main goal, to just make everything comfortable. That's just not possible, and we really need, it's distress tolerance for the kids, and especially distress tolerance for the adults.
And just on that, also just viewing distress tolerance as a skill that a lot of us take for granted, but that it's still a skill, and some of us have to develop it. And that's really what the treatment is helping develop this skill set. And so I think one of the conversations with teachers that's been helpful is helping them get that, because they're so good at teaching new skills, right? It's what they do in the classroom, and so I want them to envision it just like any other skill you're trying to teach. For some of the other kids in your classroom, they didn't need to be taught this skill, it came naturally, and for whatever reason, for this child, they're needing scaffolding so that they can develop this skill. And that helps them stay, again, systematic in understanding, hey, to acquire a skill, what does it take? Practice, rehearsal, scaffolding.
I just want to add one works for Lulu with the best, because I was struggling for a long time. I'm Lulu's mom, and it was like a nightmare before Jacqueline come to our school. So I think the works better she told me is take the pressure off. Just don't, because I used to push her, why don't you talk? Why don't you say good morning? I went to school with her every single morning, just hoping she can say hi to someone, but she never did it. So Jacqueline come to our school to take the pressure off, so I stopped doing that. And I think work best for her is no eye contact. I tell every teacher no eye contact. It was very weird, because no eye contact, how are you going to talk to the people? But I remember the summer camp, I taught all the teachers, all the director, no eye contact, please. So everybody ignore us. It was like a really weird feeling, but it works for her. So
right, I think that's a really great point, and I think we do remove you know, many parents will say like, look at someone when they talk to you, say hello, shake their hand, and I get that, it's politeness and manners. And I think you're pointing to a great point that a lot of times, one, we start by taking the pressure off and then are very systematic and planful about how we set up targets. And also it may mean we remove eye contact expectations at first, and then it'll come with time, and it always does.
Yeah.
But it's not the first thing we're going towards, just like we don't go for volume in the beginning. A whisper is a verbalization. So I do want to thank everybody for coming. I especially want to thank all the kids for being so brave, so patient, and the parents, and Sarah, who flew from Texas to be with us. So I really thank everybody for coming. And Juliet, the steadiest hand ever.